Welcome to the World Leisure Pathways, Past, Present, and Future Conversations podcast series. Hello, everybody who is listening to this podcast from any corner or region of the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome again to the World Leisure Pathways, Past, Present, and Future Conversations podcast series created by the World Leisure Organization in the framework of its 70th anniversary. My name is Cristina Ortega. I am the WLO Chief Operating Officer, and at today's episode, we are flying directly to Hong Kong to visit and have a conversation with our beloved friend and World Leisure Organization's Vice Chair, Dr. Lawal Marafa. Throughout this podcast, we will cover and discuss about sustainability and its strong relation with the leisure field. The word sustainability has become a hot topic and relevant issue in the recent times that is certainly redefining our global and local agendas nowadays and will definitely shape our future. We are so excited today as we have Lawal sharing his experience in this field with all of us as an academic and as a long-time member of our organization and beyond. But first, let me briefly introduce our guest today. Dr. Lawal Marafa is a professor at the Department of Geography and Resource Management at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He is also the director of the Postgraduate program in Sustainable Tourism. He served as a facilitator at the Clinton Global Initiative in 2008 and also sits on the board of directors of the World Leisure Organization, where he is also the vice chair. In 2019, Dr. Marafa was appointed as a major member of the World Tourism Organization's World Committee on Tourism Ethics, body responsible for interpreting, applying, and evaluating the provisions of the Global Code of Ethics for Tourism. Although residing in Hong Kong, Dr. Marafa acts as a bridge between Africa and Asia, serving as the regional coordinator for the new Partnership for Africa's Development Business Group and coordinates for the African Business Roundtable in Asia. Dr. Marafa's teaching and research interests cover tourism, environmental climate change, ecotourism, leisure, recreation planning and management, agriculture, and natural resource management and sustainable development. Over the years, Dr. Marafa has published many articles, presented at numerous international conferences. Wow, Lawal, how impressive experience in the field you have. Looking forward to our conversation. Let's start with the first question. In your opinion, when has this sustainability and climate-related conversation within the leisure sector started? How has this approach evolved through the years?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I think the questions of climate change and sustainability go a very long time back. We are talking about, close to 100 years people have been talking about it. Fast forward in the 1950s, when construction became, a main thing, and people started traveling out, for tourism and leisure, particularly from the north to the south. Eventually, people were using aeroplanes, and closer home, cars, vehicles. And then people started seeing that the temperature was actually changing, and it was becoming, in some places, slightly hotter, in some areas, slightly wet. Where you had snow, it was slightly melting. And so people started seeing that our activities, particularly that relates to travel, that relates to human and nature interaction, that relates to people interaction. There were changes that people were seeing, and these changes were basically, like I said, either becoming uncomfortable for people because of temperature, weather, humidity, and so on. So people started thinking, essentially both, business people started noticing that, when the weather changes, they have less booking, they have less people. Academics and scientists started seeing that their temperatures were really rising. The rains were not, the same, the snow and so on was basically changing. So everybody started noticing. And again, people started noticing that they were not comfortable doing what they wanted to do, either as a paid activity or actually as an activity for free time. And so they were not really, very comfortable. And people started noticing that something has to be done. And that was around, like I said, early 50s, 55 onwards. And then by 65, people started saying, okay, let us consider ourselves, with the natural environment, and let us see what we are doing. So by the 70s, people already said, this is something that is changing. The earth is warming, the globe is changing, climate is changing. So let's try to see what we can do, and maybe what we can do for better. So in a nutshell, this was basically the beginning, of a major discussion, of climate change. And eventually by the 1980s, people started talking about, we can do this if we can actually create a shift into sustainable development of whatever, we are doing. And that is how the aspect of sustainability came into our lives. By 1987, people started talking about, okay, sustainable agriculture, sustainable livelihood, sustainable tourism, and and so on. And this is what people were doing. Either they travel away from home or they stay at home. They want to live in a sustainable way. Yeah.
As we have said before, over the past years, you have been involved in different organizations related to sustainable tourism, rural development in Africa, sustainability and climate change, ecotourism, and so on. Based on your expertise and life experiences, how do you think other organizations related to the leisure field, which you are familiar with, as for example, the United Nations World Tourism Organization, are working towards a more sustainable working model? For example, they have recently launched the Glasgow Declaration on Sustainable Tourism, to which the World Leisure Organization has become signatory. Could you please provide us with some very good examples in some specific regions?
Yeah, well, this is, again, something that is very much topical. And yes, you are right, we were involved, in trying to get up together and contribute into the discussion on COP26, which was basically the conference on climate change, in Glasgow. Now, right within that time, already the UNWTO has identified, climate change as actually a major theme, in terms of tourism. And they have also come together with other organizations at the UN, because in the UN, you have quite a few people. So one of those that I can very quickly remember was actually UNEP, and that is United Nations Environmental Protection Program. Now, because as the UNWTO focused on sustainable tourism, making a case for sustainable tourism, now other aspects of tourism basically also became, clear that they needed attention. These are things like, heritage, if you like, tourism, and that is, ecotourism, for example, nature-based tourism. These are things that happen even without travel, because we have identified the local committees, the local people. Sometimes they don't travel, but they have a lot of fun. I mean, they have a lot of free time, so they get engaged in different types of leisure activities, both outdoors, and indoors. Now, with this argument and this discussion, it is clear that the changing of the climate is actually causing quite a few things, like we mentioned earlier. It doesn't matter if you travel or you are at home. So when you engage in activities that are not paid, activities that are free of choice, like leisure, and so on. So people started seeing that there are things that you can do to move along the change of the climate. And there are quite a few things. If you are indoors, sometimes you need cooling or you need heating, depending on where you are. So there could be a way of adaptation. If you are within a certain local community, there is the need to maintain that environment, because in the first place, it is because of the environment that you are having fun, that you are available, that you are there. If that environment is not well taken care of, then nobody will come to visit and you probably will not enjoy it. So it can be indoors, it can be outdoors. And so the UN body came together, and I can't remember the exact year, it's a bit quite recent. And they came up with what they call, focusing on green economy, both for tourism and indeed for leisure. So that simply means adding green ideas to your businesses. And you can add green ideas, to your businesses. And that simply means that you can raise your profit by simply adding green ideas. We have very good examples. Some companies that basically went paperless, which means, previously they print brochures. So if you want to travel, you go and pick up a brochure, a document, and look at it and see. Now, a lot of that is actually gone. So you do that by demand. So when you go to the agency, you say, oh, I'm traveling, maybe, to Spain, and I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. But previously, when you get to the company, they will say, okay, this is what we have for you. When you go, you do this, you do this, you do this. But when you choose yourself, and if you are aware, then there is the chance that you will reduce your environmental footprint, or what we call ecological footprint. You might like to cycle instead of taking a taxi. You might like, very simple things, to actually eat simple breakfast rather than basically going out for a whole buffet breakfast in which half of the food will not be eaten. You might actually like, to stay probably outdoors because the breeze is fine, the air is good, instead of staying indoors where you need to turn on the air conditioning. You might, when you look at leisure activities and in many other places, particularly, even in Africa, for example, there are many things that are related to water, many things that are related to air, and many things that can basically be done on land. So it is possible to reduce those that are consumptive, which means those that you take in terms of resource. You can also get more people to do it together rather than doing it individually. Now, if you are doing something together with a group of people, for the businesses, they are actually benefiting. And you are benefiting because you are meeting different people that are basically doing the same thing. And the businesses are maximizing their profits because they are getting more money from different people. So this is how, a lot of companies are basically looking at how to make, sustainability part of their businesses. And in some cases also making green, businesses, as a major theme when they promote their businesses, as well.
Thank you very much. I mean, you have shared with us many benefits as an individual, let's say, and also, and consequently, I mean, for the community and for businesses in general. But in your opinion, Lawal, what are the advantages for an organization to make leisure greener?
Yeah. Well, I think that is, again, what I have to emphasize here, that if you make leisure greener, you are actually, putting a lot of things together. Like I said, one of the examples I gave to you is actually paperless. So becoming much more digital rather than actually using physical paper. So that's one. And what that will do to you is actually it increases your profit, because you are reducing the cost. So when you are going paperless, you are actually reducing the cost. So that's number one. Number two, there is the creation of awareness. So you will be educating people. And by the way, the Mekong group, and I don't have the full document at the moment, but I know that from 2019, I think, and then they revised it when the COVID came, they are doing something called eco, I can't remember, but it has to do with an eco challenge. So which they are training people and they are making people become more aware. And that means they are becoming aware that a large amount, of what they do in tourism, or even, the local people in the local context, is actually a major challenge, to the place and to the people. Because if you are looking at leisure and tourism and so on, you have to know that there is something for the space, for the place where it is happening, and there is also something for the people. And the people will be those who are visiting, and basically those who are staying, in the locality. So creating, awareness is one. When they are aware, when they know the benefits and the negatives, then they become committed. So that's one. Number two, you can continue also to monitor. If people are aware, then we now try to see if they are actually doing the right thing, or not, as far as we are concerned. And if it is indoors, so for example, so within the rooms, for example, sometimes people are rushing out, not on purpose. So they are rushing out, so they leave the air conditioner on, or they leave the heater on, depending on where you are. Even in Austria, this study has been identified. So you have to monitor and basically come back and try to turn off, the devices. Yeah, a little bit of activity will actually change the situation. Number three is actually, trying to share, the work. So share the work or the task. And so the companies can share the tasks. And so in that way, they give people more time and generally more innovation, because when you have more time, you actually become innovative. And you can relax, you can sit, you can, do something else, and then you can start thinking, about your contribution, in that particular place. And so innovation is one, awareness is another one, monitoring is actually, another one. I think the last one is when you innovate, or when you want to change, the way you do things, then sometimes it comes along with an initial cost. So depending on the size of the company, that initial cost, can be a challenge. But I'm happy to say that a large number of countries, even in Africa, I'm aware that a few countries, Egypt, South Africa, Nigeria, Ethiopia, I think they provide grants, to people, like an initial grant. Say, for example, you want to put a solar panel, for your resort, for your little hotel, they give you a grant, to do that. And so that is a few of those things that I think some companies have been doing, and it's all over. So the example I gave to you in Mekong, which basically I forgot the name of the document. So the Mekong countries are actually Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and even very much south of China and Vietnam. So they have what they call the Mekong group, because Mekong is the main river that connects 5 or 6 countries. So they have a lot of tourism activities within that area. So they normally come together and meet, so that, whatever situation they have, they can look at it together.
Thank you very much for pointing out these key issues that can make a huge change. Let me make you a final question, Lawal. In your opinion, how leisure is related to sustainability and particularly to the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, I think, again, when we talk about sustainability, or we talk about Sustainable Development Goals, of course, they're a bit different, but, we treat them again interchangeably, which means we can speak on one. So to me, I always think that sustainability or sustainable development is actually a process. So we cannot say, oh, we have achieved sustainability today, or we have achieved sustainable development, but we can move on with the process that is essentially going on. Now, if you look at leisure as an industry, in fact, even just 2-3 weeks ago, I had to make a correction with someone that said to me, oh, leisure, recreation, and tourism, they are the same. And I had to say, no, they are not the same. I mean, on the surface, yes, we can talk about them interchangeably, but they are basically, different. So if you look at Sustainable Development Goals and the way it relates to leisure, there are quite a few things. We said leisure is basically something that you do at the free time, or the activities that help you to grow, and so on. And basically you have the right to do it, human rights, you have the right to leisure, and so on. So there are quite a few things. These 17 goals can actually be classified into those that are totally linked to leisure, and those that are totally linked to the place where leisure activities can happen. So if we are looking at that in that sense, then if a company or a government policy is looking to do sustainable development goals in relation to leisure, then I think in the very first is to try to look at those things together. So I will not focus on SDG 1 or SDG 2, that is basically hunger and poverty, and food. You need to eat anyway to be able to participate in leisure or even travel. But as you move on to places like sustainable urban area, right? So if you are looking at parks, for example, urban parks, green open spaces. So those must be provided where you have a large number of people. So it's not only in the urban area, it can be in the rural area. Most village areas, they have a village square where people come out, to relax. In many of those, villages, they have streets where you have cafes, you have bars, you have places where people have fun. So these are areas that might be enhanced so that people, if they have their free time and they want to relax, they can also get there, and do what they want to do. There is SDGs that is focusing on education, quality education, gender, for example, and so on. It is interesting to note that for leisure and tourism, and the figures can change depending on where you are talking about. It can be up to 60%, 70%. In some Middle Eastern countries, the women can be less than that in terms of leisure and tourism employment. So if they are employed very well, that is already meeting up to one of the SDGs, because we are looking at quality employment, we're also looking at, gender equality. Now, when you are looking at space, where these can also be done, then it can be done outside, of the home. It can be done, in green areas, and you are looking at, life on land. That is, I can't remember, SDG 14, 15, and 13. And then in water, because like I said earlier, leisure and tourism can be done either where the water is available, like sea, river, or on the land, like when you go hiking, outside. So those are places that are also addressed, by the Sustainable Development Goals. And the fact that you are participating freely, you are not forced to do leisure, you are not basically, asked by somebody else to do it. You are doing it because you have that time, you are doing it because you have that skill, you are doing it because you really want to do it. Then you are looking at already SDG 16 and 17, and that means you are really having peace of mind, and you are basically enjoying, what you are doing. I think that is how I can link SDGs, with leisure.
Thank you so much, Lawal, for sharing your opinion and knowledge on these topics with us and the audience.
Thank you.
I hope you have found inspiration throughout this testimonial from Lawal, and hopefully it has been you eager to learn more about this trendy and fascinating topic. Thank you very much for listening, and do not miss our next podcast episode to be released soon.